You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Welcome back to the Cabral Concept, and welcome to our Wellness and Weight Loss Wednesday show. Excited you could join me here today talking about one of my favorite topics, and that is Ayurvedic medicine and all of its wisdom and everything that it has to share with us 6,000 years later after we know its roots began. So today, again, one of my favorite things to go through is this thing called Ama. Even 6,000 years ago, they knew that there was a substance that began to form in the body that they called Ama, which simply meant toxins. And they knew that toxins developed into Ama, or just toxicity, from poor digestion, poor food digestion. And it could cause something they called stickiness or dampness, which was candida, bacterial overgrowth, and of course, all the other toxicities that you could also get even 6,000 years ago, which, believe it or not, still included things like heavy metals or anything environmental-based pathogens as well. That could be parasites, of course. It could be H. pylori. Now, were they calling it H. pylori? No. Were they even calling it parasites? No. There's different terminology, but the same premise still existed. How do we clear the body of these toxicities that we call Ama? And very specifically in Ayurveda, they spoke about if there's one way that you're going to accumulate toxins the fastest, that is through food, and even healthy food. And I've explained that before because one of the issues is this, is that when your body's in a stress state, whether it's digestive or whether it's environmental toxicities, food toxicities, heavy metals, mercury amalgams in the mouth, you name it. Any stress in the body, anytime the body thinks that or feels that it's under stress, could just be mental, emotional, etc., that what it does, it actually starts to slow digestion. It does that because your body can't do everything at once. So it says, okay, well, we have to deal with this fight or flight based situation, this survival based situation. Again, you might simply be getting the kids ready for bed, right? Or might be getting them ready for school in the morning, or might be commuting to work or giving a presentation. Your body sees it as, I'm under stress. And if you try to put food in the body while you're stressed, what happens is you get a lot of undigested food. You get a lot of fermental-based food that causes Ama. Well, again, because I would say the Vedas and the Ayurvedic doctors were much more in tune with people's bodies and how they felt, and they maybe had less to concentrate on. I mean, I'm just kind of giving them, I want to give them their due, but also just say, listen, there wasn't the 77,000 man-made chemicals 6,000 years ago. So what they had to focus on was less input than we have today. They have to deal with all the EMFs and electricity and the lights and the changing of circadian rhythm. But of course, everyone has to deal with their own thing. And 100 years from now, who knows? I'm optimistic. I'm hoping it might be better. Maybe. I'm hoping it might be better. Or at least there might be less fuel emissions. But, we don't know. Will there still be the cutting down of the rainforest and trees? Where there'll still be, of course, there'll be probably a greater amount of EMFs because we're now moving into the Internet of everything, where everything will be connected and there'll be scanners everywhere you go, and there'll be things that light up on your phone, and, we'll be intimately connected to that. So I don't think that we're ever going to run into shortages of how we can collect toxins and Ama in our body. But one thing I can tell you is this, is that you must start with the food that you put in your body. So I want to explain very, very hopefully, succinctly, of which foods cause the greatest amount of Ama and what Ayurveda recommended as you're beginning to reduce and detoxify your body. So one thing we practice and talk about all the time in my practice, my work, is completing, in our community, a 21-day Dr. Cabral detox, or let's just call it a functional medicine detox, because you can use any brand that you feel comfortable with. But it has to have the correct phase 1 and phase 2 liver detoxification nutrients and the proper amount of amino acids and protein to make sure you don't become too catabolic. But I've already explained that story before. You can go to How to Complete a Functional Medicine Detox, that podcast at stephencabral.com/podcast. Today, what I'd like to talk about, though, is what about the foods? Not just for a seasonal detox 7 days every 12 weeks or every season, which is what they recommend in Ayurveda, and which I absolutely and wholeheartedly recommend today. But what are the foods that you should be looking at on a daily basis if you're someone that's feeling low energy, inflamed, sluggish, or you've been gaining a lot of weight, right? The weight could be water retention, could be cellulite, or it could just be puffiness. But either way, your body is toxic. It's swollen. Your body's telling you that. Listen, the body's swollen. It's saying we've met our rain barrel capacity. It literally, not just figuratively, literally, it's saying, I'm swollen full of water. I've met my toxic capacity. Well, what we need to do first is look at our daily diet, because we know the food that we put in our body is actually helping us or hurting us. But today I'm going to give you a lot of products that we believe to be healthy. And you know what? They could be healthy. They could be healthy if you had not already filled up your rain barrel, if you weren't already in a toxic-based state. So what I'm going to do is just go through all the different types of foods, which ones are best, which ones aren't as great, and we can take it from there, okay? So, again, there's so many great books. I've named them before in Ayurveda. I want to give you one more episode that really just takes all of a lot of the rhetoric and the thickness, really the density of Ayurvedic medicine, because it is quite dense, and give you what you need to know for yourself. And then, of course, I'll pull it together at the end. So I want to start with fruit. Fruit is one of the most amazing things that we've been given to eat. One is that it's 90% water, so it's great to flush out the body, flush the kidneys, flush the liver, flush the blood. Your blood's 90% water, right? We need all of that hydration, and it comes along with all the minerals. Well, if we're particularly in a higher AMA-based state, we want to be careful with a lot of the higher sugar-based fruit. Again, could you get into them in 12 weeks from now? Absolutely. I'm not saying that. But for right now, until you balance those blood sugar levels, balance the inflammation, balance the hormones, balance the candida and bacterial overgrowth, we're going to cut down on a lot of the grape juice or grapes, the bananas. We're going to cut down on even, I would say, things like apples for right now. We're going to give you lower fructose-based fruit. So instead of always telling you what you can't have, I like to focus on more of what you can have. And that is more items such as the citrus-based fruit, the lemon, the lime, grapefruit are amazing. Things such as kiwi you could get into, and berries. Berries are lower glycemic, and they can be absolutely fantastic for you. Pomegranates, another one of my favorites. That's a great one as well. So that is fruit. We're going to stay to lower glycemic ones. What about vegetables? Now, vegetables, they're all great, right? Well, not exactly. So what we're looking for is a little bit of the less starchy ones in the beginning. Again, if someone's sluggish, if someone's swollen, if they have blood sugar dysregularity, if they have trouble losing weight, we're going to stay with a little bit of the lower starch-based ones. So we're going to cut out the eggplant. We're going to cut out the corn. We're going to cut out, even the heavier, more dense root-based vegetables in the beginning, right? We can add a little bit of the sweet potato. We can add a little bit of those parsnips. We're going to go easy on them. We're going to use them at lunch, not really at dinner. So what we're going to do is focus more on what? We're going to focus more on the celery, the green leafy vegetables such as spinach and chard, and maybe even kale if you can digest it, but it might be a little too hard to digest unless you really cook it up well in a stew or soup. We're going to use some of those great sprouts. If you like alfalfa or sunflower or mung bean sprouts, those could be absolutely fantastic for you as well. Couple of things that I want to mention. A lot of people consider mushrooms a vegetable. I want to be careful with them in the beginning. I'm not as big of an advocate of always using mushrooms for daily health or daily food. I consider mushrooms to be a form of medicine. I use them to boost the immune system, certain parts of the immune system as needed. They're a fungi. I wouldn't necessarily consider them a food, but again, if you're healthy, then enjoy. But if you're someone that's a little bit more sluggish, if you're a little bit more prone to allergies and asthma, Th2-based dominance, or candida overgrowth, I would simply remove them, unless you're working with a health practitioner, for a period of about 12 weeks before gradually and slowly introducing them back in. Because you don't know if you have candida overgrowth or mold overgrowth unless you've done an organic acids test and or a stool test and a mold-based test as well. So just a couple bits of advice there, but cooked vegetables such as broccoli and, again, I spoke about spinach before. Cooking is easier to digest. Warming is also nourishing and anti-ama as well. Hot, nourishing. We'll get to spices in a moment. What else could I give you? Asparagus, you could certainly do that. Cauliflower, if you know that you don't have the candida overgrowth or bacterial overgrowth. Brussels sprouts can be added later as well, as long as there's no bloating or fermentation. Really, really great to choose from. Grains. What about grains? Well, grains we know. We know that we have to be a little bit more careful with them. Now, more towards the whole grains would be okay. We actually just start with some of the root vegetables, sweet potato, etc., eventually moving into some of the wild rice. Or well, first we test white rice if you're in the candida protocol to see if it just ferments, or I shouldn't say that, to see if it gives you bloating or gas because of either lectin-based sensitivity, inability to break it down, etc. But it's not in isolation, so it's not like it's a high glycemic product when taken with vegetables, when taken with some olive oil, healthy fat, etc. But what we do is we allow people to test the quinoa or amaranth or other items such as that, wild rice, brown rice, black rice, red rice, etc. That is absolutely can be acceptable, and you can try to mix that with a little bit of mung beans or dal with some of the spices, again, that we'll talk about in a moment, and that makes a khichdi. The khichdi is basically rice and mung beans. I've spoken about this before in the past. You're welcome to check that out, but it can be great for eliminating, binding up, and removing a lot of toxins in the gut. Beans. Beans are one that we're very careful with my practice. We'll use them in people that are on a strictly vegan-based diet where we need to make sure that we do get some nourishing protein into their body because they could be in a more of a catabolic state. So we'll use black beans and we'll use chickpeas and we'll use all sorts of different types of legumes and dal and all of these great vegan-based proteins. But we have to be careful because they are fermentable. So what we typically do is we buy them sprouted or we cook them up really well. We can also turn black beans or we can turn chickpeas into hummus and black beans into soup or a dip. And that will help to remove a lot of the phytic acid, remove and break down a lot of the lectins and make them easier to digest. Heat them as well. That can be absolutely great. But we have to be careful, though, because the problem is that these beans can ferment and they can create more ama and they can feed that candida, they can feed that bacterial overgrowth in the gut as well. Nuts and seeds. What about nuts and seeds? Well, again, we are careful with nuts and seeds. On our candida protocol, bacterial overgrowth protocol that we do for gut-based issues, it's just called the candida and bacterial overgrowth protocol. I don't want to ruin that, so I'll share that at the end. But this is, we actually don't include nuts and seeds for the first 4 weeks. The exception being some flax seeds if you want in your smoothie, if someone's doing seed cycling, etc. Pumpkin seeds, flax seeds, sesame seeds, basically the exception. They're a little bit more heating. Remember, we're staying away, I'm not going to get too deep into Ayurveda, but we're staying away from a lot of the damp, cold foods that will create more ama, that will slow the digestion, that will actually cool the stomach, where kapha is related. We're talking about an anti-kapha based diet. So what do? Well, we're not against nuts. We just have to make sure the person can digest them. So we're typically recommending a raw sprouted-based version of almonds or another type of nut 4 weeks after, and we're testing that as a variable, right? How about dairy? Well, dairy is just completely eliminated from our plan for the first 4 to 6 weeks. After that, we can start with what? Some goat-based milk, and it might be raw or it might be however you choose to. But it never needs to be added in. We're very careful with milk. And the reason is we do so much food sensitivity testing that we can see all of these IgG food-based allergens in people, namely to cow's milk. So if someone wants to eventually 6 weeks, 8 weeks into a protocol, begin testing out a little bit of raw goat's cheese or a little bit of kefir, they can try it only if interested. Ayurveda, believe it or not, even used a little bit of just kefir or buttermilk from goats. And in modern day Ayurveda, they're using more acidophilus-based probiotics than anything else, which, of course, we follow suit. We agree with. What about animal products? Well, Ayurveda is not a big believer in a lot of animal-based products for the kapha-based state or the ama-based state. And that's because of the actual digestion that takes place. And they can contain, especially if they're not from a clean-based animal, more toxins of their own. I would agree with that. We lean more towards fish. We lean more towards turkey or poultry, chicken, from a clean, pastured-based version than any of the other types of meat, especially, again, as we're trying to get someone healthy. If you want to talk 12, 16 weeks from then, different story. But our job right now is to really clean out a person's system and not overtax the digestive system that includes all 28 feet as well as the liver itself. So big fans of that. And again, leftovers, leftover protein, leftover fish is more damp. It's more cooling for the digestive system as well. And that isn't great either in Ayurveda. I'm just giving you the whole thing today. I want you to take your takeaways away from this. What about oil or fats? Well, again, very careful to use a lot of cooling fats. What we typically use is a little bit more of olive oil, not too much. A little bit more of avocado, not too much. Not really any butter or any dairy or even a lot of coconut for the first 4 weeks. Why? Well, it's more cooling. It's more damp. We'll use ghee as needed and as interested after 4 weeks. Ghee, clarified butter, a little bit more towards not as cooling. And it could be nice to choose for a little flavoring and a little healthy fat if you choose to go that route. Sweeteners, we just stay away from sweeteners. Any sweetener that is not one of the fruit that I mentioned. We stay away from all the processed foods. A little bit of raw honey, a little bit of maple syrup can be added in after 21 days. Ayurveda agrees. They say the same thing. Sugar is the most amagenic. They call it amagenic, toxin forming of all foods, right? All foods. So the more things that are processed, the more they're amagenic. Stevia is not included with that, which is why we use some stevia. Spices. What about spices? Well, this is where Ayurveda loves to say, add spice to your food for flavor, right? Less of the sugar, less of all those things. Let's add a little bit of that Himalayan sea salt, not too much. Let's add some of the cracked pepper if that works for you. Let's add some of the oregano, some of the rosemary, some of the thyme. All of these are fantastic. Not only are they good for the gut, meaning they help to remove and eradicate the pathogens that shouldn't be living there, like the candida and bacterial overgrowth, but they're also great for digestion as well. So do feel free to add those to your meals for a little flavor. Enjoy all of those different spices as well. Just a couple more things. Really careful about drinking milk with a meal. We never recommend that. Never recommend that. Not even nut milk. So we're not recommending a cold milk or cold water for that. Any beverage at a meal. No cold. We want ginger tea, hot water with lemon, spring water. All of those things are great. Not too much at a meal, just enough to get the food down, just enough to mix with the food. The majority of that liquid should be taken a half hour before the meal or 1 hour after the meal, right? So we want to allow the hydrochloric acid to be produced in the stomach and the digestive juices and enzymes to mix up with the food that you're eating. And then we can start to add more and more liquid around that ingestion of food. So all of these, believe it or not, are taken from a book called Ayurvedic Healing by Dr. David Frowley, a comprehensive guide it's called. Great book, one of the hundreds of books that I've had the pleasure of reading on Ayurveda. I always like to promote others in the practice of integrative health. I'm a big believer in that. And Dr. David Frowley is an amazing practitioner, one of the, I would say, first and foremost in the United States of learning from India, bringing it to the United States. Vasant La, Dr. David Frowley, Dr. Svoboda, those are some of my favorites as well. There's so many great. I don't want to not include anyone, right? But those are doctors that I enjoy learning from as well. Now, the funny thing is, as I'm reading over that list, because I always go through my Ayurvedic texts, I always make sure that I'm kind of up on my Ayurvedic study and it's so enormous, right? So I always want to make sure, what am I missing? What should I include more of? And when I'm reading through that, it's amazing because I look at it and I know that I've done the work. I've been studying Ayurveda for, about 15 years or so. But that is what ultimately our sensitive gut guide for our candida and bacterial overgrowth protocol has morphed into. It's an anti-ama, lower lectin, low FODMAP, lower inflammatory, lower glycemic. It's all these things rolled into one. Now, in the future, do we want someone on a lower lectin, lower FODMAP, lower whatever forever? No, because you miss out on all the benefits of these other types of foods. So when I say, would I love people to one day be able to have a banana again? Of course. Would I want one day for people to eat cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and more of those foods? Of course, right? So what I want to do is set the stage. I want to rebuild that gut, and I want to reduce a lot of the ama in the body. So we teach this with our functional medicine detox right now, called the Dr. Cabral Detox. I'm going to change that in the future. I don't want that to be in my name. I want it to stand alone. I want it to just simply be a functional medicine detox, not the name attached to it. I don't want there to be any ego or anyone feeling like they have to promote me or anything like that. I want them to promote functional medicine, integrative medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, right? That's what I want it to all be about. So what we do is we do a 21-day Dr. Cabral Detox, a 21-day functional medicine detox that works on all of these things at once without you essentially even knowing that it's happening, right? So what we're doing is we're reducing ama, 21 days to start, and then we do a 7-day community detox every season. We have one coming up in the beginning of January that I will absolutely be participating. Remember, I practice what I preach. 7 years of doing detoxes. Every single season, that's what I've done. I started with the 21-day. I do 7 days. Then I do my weekly fasting, right? So I talk about all of these things. I'm a big believer. But why do I do it seasonally, a full detox? It's because I'm not going to stop living in the real world, right? I live in a world that's toxic. I'm not going to pretend that it's not. I live in the city right now. I literally live in the city. I walk outside. There are thousands of cars producing lots of pollution. There are trains that go by. I live in a condo building that I love. That's beautiful. I live in a brownstone in Boston, and there are, everything. There's hustle and bustle. It's fantastic, right? But I'm getting bombarded. If I turn off my wireless router, it doesn't really matter, right? Because all my neighbors have one, and they're certainly able to move through the walls. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to create a bedroom that's quiet, that's EMF free, and I've done shows on that as well. But what I'm also looking to do is remove these toxins from food-based, from environmental every 12 weeks. And I invite you to do the same. I really do. So if you're a health practitioner, I invite you to do a 21-day functional medicine detox with your patients and clients. And if you're working on your own health on your own, there's no better place to start than with the functional medicine detox. You can work with your local functional medicine doctor. You can go to equilibriumnutrition.com and look for the Dr. Cabral Detox, or go to drcabraldetox.com, whatever works for you. I'm trying to just get the information out because I gave you a lot of information today. It might seem overwhelming, like, well, what do I do? Well, you simply have to allow yourself to use a blueprint that works. We've taken Ayurveda and just tried to blend it with modern day state-of-the-art functional medicine. That's what we do. But you can use the list that I gave you. You can say, I can still have fruit. I can still have vegetables. I can still have grains. I can still have protein. I can still have spices. I can still have beverages, right? I can have all of these things. I can still have beans. But what do? Well, I need to choose the ones that are going to allow me to not feel as sluggish, to not feel as bloated, as puffy, as swollen, or hold as much water or gain weight, right? To not have the brain fog. And the way that you can do that is start to rotate the foods in your diet. You can actually see which ones are affecting you the most. I did a podcast on that. And again, I invite you to listen to that podcast called How to Create Your Own Rotation Diet. So simply go to stephencabral.com/podcast and type in rotation diet. And we're here as well. If you want to go to cabralsupportgroup.com, that's our free private Facebook group. You're welcome to join. We would love all positive people out there to not only ask your question, but also provide support for others, to cheer others on their journey. That's what this is all about, helping each other, right? We are all in this together. All we have is each other. That's it. We're sharing information, we're sharing our successes, and we're also sharing our trials. Like, what do we need help on? And we're there to support each other. So our next detox does start in January. Of course, I would love you on that, but you can start now. You don't have to wait. You don't have to be part of that community detox. Do it on your own. 21 days is what I recommend starting with, but if you're not able to do the 21 days and you want to kind of dip your toes in the water, as they say, then great. Start with 7 days. Begin to just experience what an elimination diet is like. Begin to experience what removing these toxins from your body feels like so that you understand that there is a new level of health that you can achieve. And yes, you're not going to be feeling your absolute best days 1, 2, or 3, but you start to come out of it days 4, 5, 6, 7, and it's like a new, lease on life, as they say, right? You begin to feel that new health is possible for you. That weight loss is possible for you. And again, if you're not looking to lose weight, I'm not looking to lose weight anymore. I still do a detox 7 days every single 12 weeks. And if I might lose a couple pounds, no big deal. I can put the weight right back on because My digestion is healthier for having done it. My absorption of nutrients is going to be healthier. Why? Because my liver is what detoxes and cleans my blood every 6 minutes. It filters all the blood in my body. I just want to give it some support. If it does that, well, then it's going to be able to better handle and utilize all the other nutrients that I give it. Because of the food you put in your body, the supplements that you swallow, all of those things are ultimately going to be filtered, cleaned, moved around through your blood, which does pass through your liver, right? So that's our job. That is absolutely how we support our body. And hopefully this was helpful. It's an understanding that food absolutely is what nourishes the body. But at the same time, if you're already in that sluggish-based state, brain fog, inflammation, weight gain, etc., what we need to do are just stay away from foods, even if they are healthy, air quotes, that would cause us to feel a little bit more weighed down, a little bit more bogged down, or that contain harder to digest properties and that feed AMA to a greater degree. So hopefully this was helpful. If it was, let me know on Instagram. I love hearing from you there, just at my name, Stephen Cabral, on today's post. And also, again, feel free to join the community over at cabralsupportgroup.com. And last but not least, if this was helpful, and if you believe that someone out there, whether it's a family member, a coworker, anyone, that this could help them, that this could serve them, please do feel free to pass along. And I'll speak with you tomorrow on our Training or Toxic Thursday. Take care. Bye. Are you ready to heal yourself and then go on to heal others? If so, the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute can help you discover proven functional medicine protocols that blend the best of 7 different healing disciplines from around the world. I personally share with you the exact handouts and protocols I use in my private practice that enable people to get well, lose the weight, and live longer, stronger. I want to pass this information on to the next generation of health coaches, and that is exactly why I created IHP. We are the future of the health coaching industry, and the skills and knowledge you will learn will make you an in-demand certified health coach anywhere in the world. Although we have many medical professionals taking the IHP certifications, no experience is necessary, and half our members have no previous health certifications. At the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute, our motto is a health coach in every home. Our goal is that you take this knowledge and then share it with family, friends, loved ones, your community, or in a practice where you create a career you love and can be proud of. The global IHP community is filled with some of the most kind and caring people in the world, and we can't wait to welcome you into our world soon. For more information or to set up a discovery call with one of our IHP Health Coach graduates, simply head over to integrativehealthpractitioner.org.